In the last video, we talked about how Takamura conquered the super middleweight division. I also mentioned in the last video that Ippo had returned to Japan after he watched the match between Ricardo and Billy Mccallum. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. And by the way guys, this happens after the match between Takeshi Sendo and Alfredo Gonzalez. They were the undercard for the WBA Featherweight Super Champion and the so-called pound-for-pound king, Ricardo Martinez. The two boxers met in the middle of the ring. Here we learn that Billy Mccallum is the former WBC Featherweight Champion, and he is also currently the #1 contender in the WBA Featherweight rankings. Just a trivia guys, just because Billy is a former champion doesn't mean he was defeated. He surrendered his WBC Featherweight title because he had a chance to fight Ricardo. He had a WBC mandatory title defense, so the WBC did not allow him. And what he did was he relinquished his title to move to the WBA and fight Ricardo. So guys, Billy Mccallum is also a fierce and undefeated WBC Featherweight Super Champion with 22 wins, 18 knockouts, 0 losses, and 1 draw. And he also has 3 world title defenses. He just moved to the WBA to prove to the world that he is the strongest in the featherweight division. Before their match with Ricardo, Billy said, "I'm still the champion, and tonight I will prove that I'm the strongest featherweight in the world." Ippo then said that if you add it up, it's like a unification fight for the WBA and WBC title. Here we learned from Marascus that Ricardo has 68 fights and 68 wins, and he thinks Ricardo will win via knockouts in the early rounds. You may notice that Ricardo is just so OP in the story, and it'd be a really safe bet to think that he will soon be the final boss that Ippo will face in the future at the time that he returns to boxing. Next, Ippo mentioned the ways to predict who will win the match, but the most important basis for the outcome of the fight is the first punch thrown by the boxer. So guys, let's watch out for who gets the upper hand in the first exchange of punches between these two fierce boxers. Before the fight started, Billy thought to himself, "I'm getting annoyed with the weight. I become world champion, but they still don't call me the strongest. All they say is Ricardo, Ricardo. Tonight I will show and prove to them that I'm the strongest featherweight in the world." When Billy threw a punch to warm up, Marascus and Ippo were surprised because from his first throw, they already knew that he is a solid and formidable opponent for Ricardo. Wow guys, the fight between these two monster boxers is going to be epic. At the sound of the bell, Billy quickly rushed forward, but when he got close, he immediately stopped and it seemed like they had a face-off in the middle of the ring. Billy's movement seemed to say, "Let's box, prepare for the longest 12 rounds of your career." Both of them couldn't wait any longer and both hoped the fight would be a good one. Ippo was impressed by Billy's courage and the fact that he showed no fear towards Ricardo. They spent a long time sizing each other up and looking for the perfect timing, being the strongest in their weight division. Even though they were just sizing each other up, the audience could already feel and see the coming storm. Because of the intensity of this face-off, Ippo forgot to breathe and almost passed out. Ippo then mentioned that Ricardo's style is to study his opponent in the first whole round, and in the second round, after studying his opponent, he becomes aggressive. Here, Ippo explains Ricardo's perfectly balanced stance and his intense aura in the ring. Because of this, Ippo was once again short of breath. Luckily, Marascus came to the rescue. Dang it, I don't know if I should be excited about this intense face-off or just laugh my ass out because of Ippo's fainting. Man. But then, we learned that what makes Ippo stop breathing is Billy. Because even though Ricardo's aura is extremely intense, Billy remains calm and seems prepared for whatever could happen. Next, Ippo explains that Billy's stance is called the Detroit style and it's very hard to get close to him because only half of his body is exposed, making the target area significantly smaller. Moreover, this stance is typically used by counter-punchers, making it hard to attack recklessly. If you guys remember, this was also Bison's style when he fought against Takamura. We learned here from Ricardo's coach that even though this is called the Detroit style, it actually started in Philadelphia, where Billy was born and raised. He said that Billy's style has a very tight defense, which is also called the Philly shell. That's why even though many used this style, Billy surely stands out because it originated from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where that style was born. Ippo even said that in his opinion, 3 minutes are not enough for Ricardo to fully understand the Philly shell. But once Ricardo understands it, that will surely be the end of the fight. In the waiting room, Sendo is already getting impatient with what seems like a staring contest between Billy and Ricardo. His coach replied that even though Ricardo is a seasoned fighter, he seems to be very cautious with Billy due to the intense pressure he's exerting. Wow guys, if I were in that ring, I wouldn't be able to breathe from being so nervous. The coach then tells Sendo that Ricardo is waiting for Billy to make the first move, and after that, he will create a game plan to defeat him. After a long period of sizing each other up and Billy mulling it over, he finally made a move and was planning to strike first. When the two locked eyes, it seemed like the calm before the storm. Suddenly, Ricardo unleashed a left jab. Sendo was shocked in the waiting room because Ricardo was the first to charge and was not actually waiting. Here we learned from Ippo that Ricardo took the initiative because he couldn't gather any information about Billy. Ricardo landed a series of solid left jabs on Billy's defense. Ippo wondered what happened because it was the first time Ricardo attacked first. Then we learned that he went first because he was hyped up by the fights between Sendo and Alfredo. That's why he's heating up for a good fight. Billy just shrugged off Ricardo's punches, and then he said, with all your experience, you should know that your weak punches have no effects on my strong defense. Because of this, Ricardo quickly charged at Billy. Ricardo released a flurry of punches one after another, but Billy easily dodged and deflected these punches. Billy was impressed by Ricardo's solid left jabs. He said it's the first time he's faced someone with such a solid punch. Billy noticed that all these left jabs were just setups for a powerful right straight punch. And when Ricardo threw his right punch, Billy quickly dodged it and countered, grazing Ricardo slightly. Next, we found out that Ricardo avoided it by bending his neck. Everyone in the audience was impressed by the boxing prowess shown by these two monsters. Even I am impressed. It's just so incredible. Ricardo thought to himself that the more he gets serious, the more his fights become boring. Because he can see, feel, guess where all the punches are coming from, so none of them hit him. Okay, so if being too handsome comes with a handful of problems, then being too strong comes with its own set of problems. Noted. By the way guys, Ricardo thought about this because he also wants to have a really exciting fight, like the fight between Sendo and Alfredo that happened before his showdown with Billy. Ricardo then challenged Billy to a fierce battle, because he's sure that he can bring out Ricardo's true strength. Ricardo continued to rain punches. Billy was surprised because this was not the calm Ricardo he was expecting. But guys, Billy is a counter puncher, so he said it to make his job easier. When Ricardo threw a 1-2 punch, Billy quickly countered with a left hook and planned to follow up with another punch. But to everyone's surprise, even though the timing of the counter was perfect, Ricardo easily blocked it, seemingly expecting Billy's counter. Billy then went on the offensive, releasing a flurry of flickered jabs. However, these seemed to have no effect on Ricardo, who easily blocked each punch. Billy started to worry as Ricardo remains unaffected by his punches. Because of this, Billy decided to use his deadly right-hand cannon, but as he was about to release it, he suddenly jumped back. We learned that he jumped back because Ricardo seemed to be waiting for that punch to come and planned to counter with a solid hit. Ricardo then advanced and released a series of left jabs. After Ricardo's flurry of jabs, Billy found himself cornered against the ropes. Billy seemed to be waiting and challenging Ricardo to attack while he was on the ropes. When Ricardo charged, he unleashed a series of left jabs, and Billy seemed helpless against them. And Ricardo smiled. He pleaded for Billy to do better in the fight to make it more exciting for him. Billy was slowly getting familiar with Ricardo's pattern of throwing punches and planned to counter. But when he was about to counter, Ricardo easily stopped him and Billy had to defend again. Billy thought to himself that Ricardo had no openings whatsoever. Billy was overwhelmed and Ricardo continued to rain down punches, challenging Billy to fight back. As Billy took more and more punches on his defense, he began to feel the pain in his arms. So he threw a punch to escape from being cornered against the ropes. But Ricardo easily caught it and asked, "What's wrong?" We can see the agony on Billy's face due to the pain he felt in his arms. Ricardo seemed to be toying with Billy, showering him with punches while shouting, "I beg you to fight! Please give me a good fight!" Billy's arms were losing their strength and he dropped his L-shaped guard. Ricardo continued to throw left jabs. However, Billy had no response and the fight remained one-sided. When Billy tried to throw a punch to stop the beatdown, Ricardo quickly stopped him and landed clean hits on his face. Ricardo's coach and Sendo said that Ricardo shattered Billy's incredibly strong shell defense. Ippo was surprised to see how strong Ricardo was. He wondered if anyone could bring out Ricardo's true strength, because if no one could challenge Ricardo and bring out his real potential, it would be really sad. Ricardo then said, "Mala suerte," or bad luck, because he couldn't bring out his true strength again. And then Billy collapsed quickly. Because of this, the referee immediately stepped in and ended the fight in the first round. And still, the undefeated WBA featherweight champion of the world, Ricardo Quetzalcoatl Martinez. But even though Ricardo won, you could still see the disappointment on his face and he was saddened by another easy win. He pleaded in his mind to be given a great and intense fight, and that's where our video ends. Billy was a beast. Let me repeat that. Billy was the undefeated WBC featherweight champion before he gave up his belt to fight Ricardo. But damn, the pound-for-pound king made him look like a child and he couldn't do anything about it. It looks almost like a sad scene where a school bully beats up a small kid in a corner. So guys, if you've watched our video of Wally versus Ricardo, Wally is also really strong because he's the one boxer who was able to stand up to Ricardo. So I'm really looking forward to the upcoming fights between Sendo and Ricardo. What do you think the outcome will be? Let's all look forward to it together. So don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on the upcoming intense fights. See you next time, guys.